You came back. Good. Pull up a chair and try not to make a sound. This is the last whisper. Listen closely, because this case was never supposed to exist. Two paramedics were sent to a private estate outside the county line for a simple pregnancy emergency. The call came from a husband who sounded calm, too calm. He said his wife had fainted and he needed help before the baby arrived. By sunrise, one medic was found half alive in a ditch. His partner was gone. The ambulance was still parked outside the estate with both rear doors open, all the medical equipment untouched, and every clock inside the house stopped at 3:17 a.m. The strangest part came later. Dispatch checked the recording. The man who called for help had been dead for 36 years. Nobody in that county liked talking about Harrow House. It sat past the last stretch of paved road, behind a line of black pines that grew so thick they blocked the moon. Locals knew the place by sight, even if they had never driven up to it. It was the kind of house people pointed at once, lowered their voice, and never mentioned again. For decades, rumors clung to it. Some said it had been a home for unwanted children. Some said a religious family had lived there and refused doctors, schools, and outsiders. Older people in town told a darker version. They claimed Harrow House had been built over an old burial field, and every few years, someone inside would call for help in a voice that did not belong to the living. Most people treated those stories as country nonsense. People love giving a creepy house a creepy history. It makes the world feel more entertaining than it is. But on a freezing Thursday night in late November, the county emergency system received a call from that address. The caller gave his name as Elias Vale. His voice was soft, educated, and strangely relaxed. He told the dispatcher his wife Clara was 8 months pregnant and had collapsed in an upstairs bedroom. He said she was breathing but barely responsive. He refused to answer basic questions about her age, medical history, or whether she had received prenatal care. When the dispatcher asked if there was anyone else in the house, the line went silent for several seconds. Then Elias said, "Only family." The call was assigned to Medic Unit 12. The driver was Daniel Keene, 46 years old, 15 years on the job, divorced, tired, and respected by almost everyone who had worked with him. Daniel had seen overdose scenes, car wrecks, heart attacks in grocery stores, and children who stopped breathing before help arrived. He had the practical calm of a man who had learned that panic never saved anybody. His partner that night was Mara Collins. She was younger, sharp, and quick with her hands. People sometimes mistook her for fragile because she was quiet. Daniel knew better. Mara had walked into burning apartments and wrecked pickups without hesitation. She had held strangers together with gauze, pressure, and a steady voice. That night had been slow. One fall injury, one drunk man sleeping behind a pharmacy. Nothing unusual. Then dispatch sent them toward Harrow House. The GPS worked until it didn't. About 10 minutes from the city, the map froze, jumped, and spun in the wrong direction. The road narrowed until the ambulance was crawling between trees that scraped the sides like fingernails. There were no streetlights, no mailboxes, no porch lamps in the distance, just the ambulance headlights cutting through fog and wet branches. Mara checked the tablet twice. "This place is way out here," she said. Daniel kept both hands on the wheel. "Some people like privacy. Some people like not being found." That was the first thing she said that Daniel remembered clearly afterward. The dirt lane appeared on the left, exactly where dispatch said it would. It looked less like a driveway and more like an old service road that had been forgotten on purpose. The tires sank into mud. The ambulance rocked hard enough that the drug box rattled in the back. Then Harrow House came into view. It was huge, but not in a rich way. It looked starved. Tall windows, peeling white paint, a roofline full of sharp angles. Every shutter was closed except one on the second floor, where a narrow strip of yellow light leaked out. Daniel stopped near the front steps and left the engine running. For a moment, neither of them moved. The house seemed too quiet for an emergency. No husband waving them in, no panicked family, no porch light, no sound except the idle of the ambulance and the soft tick of cooling metal. Mara reached for the radio. Before she could call dispatch, the front door opened. A boy stood in the doorway. He was maybe 9 or 10, barefoot, thin. dressed in clothes that looked homemade, with a shirt buttoned wrong and pants too short at the ankles. His hair had been cut in uneven chunks. He stared at the ambulance like he had been waiting for it all night. Then he ran at them. Not toward the house, toward the passenger door. Mara stepped out first. The boy grabbed her sleeve with both hands. "Don't go upstairs," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. His eyes were wide and wet. He looked terrified, but he wasn't staring at Mara. He was staring past her, at the second-floor window with the yellow light. Daniel came around the front of the ambulance with the jump bag. "Where's the patient?" he asked. The boy turned to him and shook his head hard. "She is not the patient." Before Daniel could ask what that meant, a man's voice called from the doorway. "Silas, leave them alone." The boy let go immediately. His whole body changed. The panic went flat, like someone had pulled a string out of him. He backed away from Mara, lowered his head, and walked into the dark beside the porch. The man in the doorway smiled. He was tall, narrow, and dressed in an old black suit that hung on him like it had been borrowed from a corpse. His skin had the gray, papery look of someone who rarely went outside. He had no shoes on, only dark socks, clean and dry despite the mud. "Mr. Vale?" Daniel asked. "Elias," the man said. "Thank God you came." He did not sound thankful. He sounded pleased. Daniel and Mara followed him inside. The first thing they noticed was the smell. Not rot, not exactly. It was disinfectant, dust, candle smoke, and something sweet underneath, like spoiled fruit hidden in a drawer. The foyer was enormous and almost empty. No family photos, no rugs, no coats by the door. Just bare floorboards, old wallpaper, and a chandelier that gave off weak yellow light. Their boots echoed too loudly. Elias walked ahead at an easy pace. Mara stayed close to Daniel. "We need to move faster," she said, keeping her voice professional. "You reported a pregnant woman unconscious." Elias stopped. Slowly, he turned around. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes shifted to Daniel, not Mara. "She has waited a long time," he said. "A few more steps will not hurt her." Daniel felt something cold move through his chest. Mara's hand went to the radio on her shoulder. Elias noticed. "Signal is poor in old houses," he said. "Stone, wiring, weather, you understand." The radio clicked once by itself, then went silent. They climbed the staircase. Halfway up, Daniel heard movement behind a closed door on the landing. A soft shuffle, a breath, then a whisper that sounded like a child repeating the same words again and again. "Wrong mother, wrong mother, wrong mother." Mara heard it too. She stopped walking. Elias placed one pale hand on the banister. "Children have active imaginations," he said. No one had mentioned children. At the top of the stairs, they entered a hallway that seemed far longer than the house should have allowed. Doors lined both sides. Some were locked with old brass latches. Others had chairs pushed against them from the outside. Behind one door, someone laughed softly. Behind another, something scratched at the wood. Mara leaned close to Daniel and spoke through clenched teeth. "This is not a medical call. This is a scene." Daniel knew she was right. Every instinct told him to turn around, get back to the ambulance, and call police from the road. But a medical worker is trained to follow the sound of pain, and at the end of that hallway, a woman started crying. It was a thin, exhausted cry. Human. Daniel kept walking. The room they reached was guarded by a massive man sitting on a stool outside the door. His head hung forward. His hands rested on his knees. He looked asleep until the medic stepped closer. Then his eyes opened, one at a time. Elias touched the door. "Gloves, please," he said. "Masks, too." Mara stared at him. "Is there an infection risk?" "Birth is always a doorway," Elias said. "Doorways should be kept clean." Daniel put on gloves because he wanted one less argument. Mara did the same, but her hands shook now. Elias opened the door. Inside was a sitting room packed with people. They were arranged along the walls on mismatched chairs, maybe 20 of them, men, women, and children. Every one of them wore dark, old-fashioned clothes. Every one of them watched the medics enter without blinking. Some faces were scarred, some were swollen. Some had features that seemed slightly misplaced, as though several generations of illness had been carefully preserved and passed down. No one spoke. On a small table in the center of the room sat a silver bowl filled with water. Floating in it were dozens of baby teeth. Mara whispered, "Daniel." Elias guided them through the room. "Relatives," he said. "They came for the blessing." "A blessing doesn't need an ambulance," Mara said. For the first time, Elias looked annoyed. "This one does." Beyond the sitting room was the bedroom. The lights were low. A bed sat beneath a canopy of stained white fabric. Candles burned in the corners, although an electric lamp was on beside the bed. The mix of old ritual and modern light made the room feel staged, like someone had tried to copy a hospital from a dream. A woman lay on the mattress. Her name, according to the call, was Clara Vale. She was not Elias's wife. Daniel knew it before anyone said a word. There was no wedding ring. Her clothes did not belong to the house. One wrist had a hospital bracelet so faded the lettering had nearly vanished. Her hands were tied to the bed frame with strips of sheet. Her stomach was impossibly swollen. Not pregnant swollen, not medically possible. It rose beneath the blanket like something heavy had been placed under her skin. The surface moved in slow waves, pushing from side to side. Clara opened her eyes. She looked at Mara first, then at Daniel. "Don't let it hear your name," she whispered. Mara stepped forward at once, training over fear. She moved to check Clara's airway and pulse. Daniel turned on Elias. "Untie her!" Elias clasped his hands in front of his chest. "She pulls at herself when the pains come. Untie her now!" The people in the sitting room began humming. It started low, one note. Then more voices joined until the wall itself seemed to vibrate. Daniel looked back and saw them standing in the doorway, shoulder to shoulder, blocking the only exit. Mara checked Clara's pulse. "She's tacky," Mara said. "Skin is cold. Pupils are blown. Daniel, this woman needs a hospital right now." Clara grabbed Mara's wrist. Her grip was weak, but desperate. "No hospital," Clara whispered. "It follows the mother." The swollen shape under the blanket shifted. Both medics froze. Something pressed outward from inside Clara's abdomen. Not a kick, not a hand, more like a face turning under thin cloth. The humming stopped. Elias's smile vanished. "Too early," he said. That was when the boy from outside appeared in the bedroom doorway. Silas stood between the adults, small and pale, holding a kitchen timer in both hands. The timer read 3:17. "It picked her," the boy said. Elias slapped him so hard he hit the wall. Mara moved toward the child, but Daniel caught her arm. The room had changed. The silent relatives were no longer just watching. Their bodies leaned inward. Their mouths hung open. Several of them were crying without sound. Clara started screaming. The sound ripped through the room, raw and animal, and every candle went out at once. Only the bedside lamp remained. Under that weak light, Daniel saw Clara's stomach flatten for 1 second. Then something inside her answered in Daniel's voice. "Mara," it said. Mara backed away from the bed. Daniel had not spoken. The voice came again, clearer this time, from beneath Clara's skin. "Mara, help me!" Elias stumbled backward, shaking his head. "It isn't supposed to know anyone yet." Daniel grabbed Mara and pulled her toward the side door near the wardrobe. The relatives surged forward. Hands reached for them. Fingers caught Mara's sleeve. Daniel shoved through 2 bodies and hit the side door with his shoulder. Locked. Mara swung the oxygen cylinder from the bag and smashed the latch. The wood splintered. They fell through into a dark storage room filled with covered furniture and old portraits turned to face the wall. Behind them, Clara screamed once more. Then the scream stopped. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. Daniel slammed the broken door shut and dragged a cabinet in front of it. The relatives hit the other side almost immediately, not with fists, but with open palms, patting the wood in a steady rhythm. Pat, 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 like they were calming a baby. Mara was breathing too fast. "Police, now!" Daniel tried the radio. Static. Then a woman's voice came through. "Unit 12, confirm patient contact." Relief hit him so hard he nearly dropped the radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We need law enforcement, additional EMS, and fire. Possible abduction, multiple hostile subjects, 1 critical female patient, unknown hazard." There was a pause. Then dispatch answered in Clara's voice. "Don't let it hear your name." Mara stared at the radio. From the other side of the door came Daniel's voice. "Mara, open up!" Then Mara's voice. "Daniel, open up!" Then a child's voice. "Wrong mother, wrong mother, wrong mother!" The cabinet shifted. Daniel grabbed Mara's hand and pulled her toward the only window. It was painted shut, but the glass was old. He wrapped his elbow in his jacket and struck it twice. The second hit cracked the pane. Something moved under the covered furniture behind them. Mara turned. One of the portraits had fallen forward. The painting showed a woman in a white dress standing beside Elias Vale. Her face was Clara's. Beneath the portrait, written in faded ink, was the year 1988. Clara had looked 30. She had been 30 for a very long time. The cabinet at the door scraped across the floor. Daniel broke the window completely. Cold air rushed in. Outside, the drop to the ground looked dangerous but survivable. He climbed through first and landed hard in the mud below. Mara threw the medical bag down to him. Then she froze. Daniel looked up. Behind her, in the dark room, someone had placed both hands on her shoulders. It was Clara, or something wearing the shape Clara had left behind. Her belly was flat now. Her arms were loose at her sides. Her head tilted as though she was learning how a neck worked. Her mouth moved without matching the words. "She can carry it better," Clara said in Daniel's voice. Mara fought. Daniel reached up, shouting for her to jump. She kicked backward, broke free for half a second, and got one leg over the sill. Then the hands in the room pulled her back. The window slammed shut. Daniel climbed the wall until his fingers bled, but the old siding gave him nothing. Inside, Mara screamed his name once, only once. The front door opened below him. The relatives began pouring out of the house. Daniel ran. He slipped in mud, slammed into a tree, and kept going. Branches tore at his face. The ambulance lights flashed behind him, painting the fog red and white. He tried to reach the driver's door, but the massive man from upstairs stepped out from behind the vehicle, blocking him. Daniel turned toward the road. Silas stood there. The boy held the same kitchen timer, still 3:17. "It doesn't like men," Silas said. "Not for long." Daniel tried to move around him, but his legs buckled. Something had hit him from behind. He fell face first into the dirt. The world tilted. Feet passed around him. The relatives did not attack now. They walked toward the house in a slow line, as obedient as mourners. From the upstairs window came a soft tapping. Mara was there. She stood behind the glass in her white uniform, one palm pressed to the pane. Her face was blank. Her eyes moved like she could see Daniel but could not understand why he mattered. Then the lamp behind her went out. Daniel lost consciousness in the ditch near the lane. At dawn, a county deputy found him there after a farmer reported an abandoned ambulance with its lights still running. Daniel was alive, but barely. He had a concussion, 2 cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and deep cuts across both hands. Mara Collins was missing. The estate was searched before noon. Inside Harrow House, deputies found 27 bodies, men, women, and children. No signs of a shootout, no fire, no gas leak. The medical examiner later said every heart in that house appeared to have stopped at approximately the same time. 3:17 a.m. The woman on the bed was never identified. There was no body matching Clara Vale. There was a hospital bracelet tied to the bed frame, but the ink had faded beyond recovery. Elias Vale was not found either. That should have been impossible. County records showed Elias had died in 1989. His death certificate listed cardiac arrest. His burial plot was in the cemetery behind St. Bartholomew's Church. When investigators opened the grave, the coffin was empty except for a black suit folded neatly inside. The case never made national news. Small counties know how to bury stories that make them look insane. The official report described it as a missing paramedic, a traumatic injury, and a possible cult-related death scene. Daniel Keene never returned to work. He gave one recorded statement from his hospital bed, then refused every interview after that. He moved away within 6 months. People who knew him said he stopped answering unknown numbers. He would not sleep in rooms with covered windows. He kept every clock in his house unplugged. One detail from his statement stayed with the deputy who took it. Daniel said that, right before he blacked out, Silas crouched beside him in the mud and whispered something. The boy said, "They always blame the father. They never watch the mother." 3 years later, in another county 2 states away, dispatch received a late-night call from a woman asking for an ambulance. She said she was in labor at an old farmhouse with no address, only a dirt road and a broken mailbox. The dispatcher asked for her name. The woman paused. Then she said very softly, "Mara." The call disconnected before anyone could trace it. No ambulance was sent that night because the location could not be confirmed. The dispatcher filed the audio as a prank until she heard a second voice beneath Mara's, low and patient, repeating a name no one had given it, Daniel. That is where the story closes, but it does not feel finished. Harrow House was never just a haunted mansion. It was a place built around a ritual that needed outsiders to complete it. The family did not call paramedics because they wanted Clara saved. They called because they needed trained hands, fresh witnesses, and someone alive enough to carry the story away. The ritual failed in that house, but it did not end there. Something left with Mara. Something learned names. Something learned how emergency calls work. So here's the question that should bother anyone who has ever answered an unknown number late at night. When a desperate voice calls from a road that does not appear on any map and it knows exactly who to ask for, is that person being sent to rescue someone, or is someone inside the dark already waiting to be born?